If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.
You're from Dundalk, right, Peter? Yes?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. You got 5 minutes. You're on the clock. I'm walking out of here. Don't suck, all right?
All right.
All right, here you go.
All right, thanks a lot. First, I want to thank WNST and Nestor for this opportunity. You know, it's great to be talking sports with passionate fans, as passionate as listeners are to this station. I want to touch on a couple things today. First of all, the main rumor going around is that the Ravens have interest in Anquan Boldin, and the rumored asking price for Boldin is a first-round pick and a third-round pick. You know, for me, if Ozzie Newsome is showing the interest that he apparently is, you know, I think it's a no-brainer. You know, the main talk is that the Ravens are going to go wide receiver with their first pick, you know, whether it be Darius Hayward-Bay, whether it be Hakeem Nicks or Kenny Britt. You know, it only makes sense that if you're going to take a receiver with the first round who it may take 2 or 3 years to develop, why not go get the proven guy in Anquan Boldin, who you know is going to be productive for you for 2-3 years at least. You know, and that's the window that the Ravens are looking at. You know, they have older guys, you know, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed. You know, these guys, you know, they might not be around that much longer. So the window is now. And obviously, watching the AFC Championship game last year, you know, they need a big-time weapon, a receiver weapon to stretch the field. And, you know, Anquan Boldin certainly represents that. So, you know, that's pretty much a no-brainer to me. Secondly, I want to talk a little Maryland basketball. And as most of you probably know now, we're trying to get Lance Stevenson, who is a senior in Lincoln High School in New York. And, you know, I've heard the argument, I believe a contestant on this show actually presented that, you know, Stevenson is a guy who may not be a good fit for Maryland. I've heard the argument that, you know, he's a selfish player, he only cares about himself. You know, my thing is, especially during this past year, there's been a lot of criticism, you know, put the way of Gary Williams that he doesn't recruit the high-profile guys. You know, he's known to be a great in-game coach, but a lot of people think that he doesn't spend the time that he should out on the recruiting trail. You know, I happen to agree with that, you know, but, you know, how bad it is, I'm not sure. But, you know, Stevenson is known to be a top 5, top 10 recruit this year. And, you know, going back to Steve Francis is probably the last time Maryland had a recruit in here that was that highly rated. And I don't understand the argument that we shouldn't go after him. You know, there are 2 things in addition to the great campus and the great arena at the Comcast Center that is going to draw recruits to Maryland. And number 1, that's going to be winning games. And certainly if you can get a Lance Stevenson to come, which would increase the likelihood that Vasquez is going to stay because he said that he wants to play with Stevenson. You know, you have James Padgett coming in, you got Jordan Williams, the 2 freshman big guys, which we certainly lacked last year. Eric Hayes is going to be sticking around. You know, Maryland certainly is going to be ranked in the top 25 if that scenario unfolds. And very good chance they'll be in the top 5, top 10, you know, at some point in the season. Certainly, if Maryland to get back to a, you know, a legitimate team as far as recruits are concerned, you know, making an Elite 8 run or Final 4 run next year is certainly going to bring the recruits back. And another thing is Stevenson is, you know, the prototypical one-and-done player. He's going to come to college. He wants to showcase himself as well as possible. And, you know, if Stevenson comes and he's successful and he elevates the team, they can make a late run in the tournament, you know, further recruits are going to look at him and say, look, if Stevenson can do it at Maryland, I can do it too. You know, if UConn didn't have, you know, Karan Butler, Rip Hamilton in the 90s, you know, maybe guys like Emeka Okafor and Rudy Gay wouldn't have decided to go to UConn. So, you know, it's all a cycle. And Stevenson could come in, be successful, and we can make a late run in the tournament, you know, then that certainly gets Maryland back to being the elite team that they have the resources to be. You know, so I just really wanted to dispel the argument that Stevenson would be a negative for Maryland. The main thing I want to talk about is the Orioles, and obviously they started off great. You know, they're 6-3. A lot of fans are excited, but I get the sense that, you know, a lot of fans think that it's, you know, same old, and, you know, they're going to start fading down the stretch. And I'm here to tell you that they might not, you know, contend this year, but the future is certainly bright. And I attribute that to one man, and that's Andy McPhail. You know, first of all, obviously, Andy McPhail has gotten Peter Angelos, you know, out of. He's not bothering him anymore with personnel decisions. Angelos, you know, he's a nice guy. He loves the city, but he's certainly not a baseball man. You know, he's a 75-year-old guy getting older. He should not be making baseball decisions. And number 1, Andy McPhail has gotten him out of his way, and that's a plus. Another thing that McPhail has shown is from the time he got here in June 2007, he said, look, I don't care about getting a team to 500. That's not my goal. I'm not going to make moves where the end result is getting us to 500 if everything goes right. You know, his predecessors, Jim Duquette, Jim Beattie, Mike Flanagan, they go out and they sign guys like Jay Payton or Danny Baez or Jamie Walker, Chad Bradford. You know, they put a team together that had one of the highest payrolls in baseball, and if, you know, the best possible scenario was them going, you know, 79 and 83. You know, what is that going to get you in the AL East? Andy McPhail, he recognizes that in the AL East with Boston, New York, and Tampa Bay, who's certainly on par to be great for a decade, you know, that he needs to use every resource possible. You know, he signed Koji Uehara, which certainly opens up a resource in Japan. You know, obviously with the media that follows Koji, they're going to see Koji with the Oriole hat, pitching in Camden Yards and having success. And in 2010, 2011, if the Orioles need a third baseman or a second baseman, well, they won't need a second baseman, they got Roberts. If they need a third baseman or first baseman, and they don't find that they're comfortable with somebody here in the States, that they can go to Japan and pick up someone over there. He goes above slot with draftees. He signed Jake Arrieta in 2007 in the 5th round and gave him second round money. He places high value on young, cheap talent as opposed to mediocre, overpaid veterans. And, that's something that he finally gets and the past players haven't gotten. I think my time's up. I want to give it back to Nestor, and thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Well done, Peter. Well done, Peter. Representing Dundalk. We got youngsters. Not really Dundalk, more like Curly, but I'll let that go.
If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.